Welcome to the Kiana Canada Show. I'm your host, Kiana Canada. I hope that you're having a good afternoon. I am coming on here to speak about the Annunciation Catholic School incident. There is a lot of speculation online about what happened, who this person is, and I am just going to be giving my views on it and uh, trying to find balance in this particular situation. So there are a few things that I first want to start off by saying that first, I don't condone any attacks on schools. As you know, I'm an abolitionist, and these attacks really hit hard for me because there's a lot that's important for me. First, the right to education is so important. So I would never want education to be taken away from any student, especially in a situation like this. Indeed, when I was in middle school, I wrote a paper on why education was important, and I actually won a savings bond for writing that paper. So, education is really important to me, and I think it's just disheartening for that to be taken away from any student. To reiterate, I am an abolitionist, and so if you've been following my activism, you understand that these attacks in the United States are senseless, and I definitely feel like the government should be doing more to curb these attacks. We have, well, I'm an American citizen, but I'm not in the United States currently. But our country is very wealthy, and for it to be a democracy, quote unquote, it just breaks my heart that we continue to see an escalation of these events in the United States without any implementation of policies or regulations that would curb these attacks. Not only do these attacks need to be curbed, ladies and gentlemen, but there also needs to be us getting at the root cause of what's happening and why people feel compelled to violence. Like, are they being radicalized? Are they like in what part of their life, in what part of their life are they experiencing these feelings of grievance, and whether or not there is an escalation toward an extremist ideology is the question. And so I'm deeply concerned that we have seen an escalation of these attacks. And I know that there are a lot of people attempting to place this attack within a box. So I've seen some people say, well, this is an attack on Catholics, and this is such a disturbing attack. It's an attack on religion. And this attack shouldn't happen to anybody. It shouldn't happen to Catholics. It shouldn't happen to Christians. It shouldn't happen to Muslims. It shouldn't happen to LGBTQ people. It shouldn't happen to Black people. It should not happen to Jewish people. It shouldn't happen to anybody. I've also seen some misinformation online about motives. And so because that's disinformation or possibly misinformation, I'm not going to really cover that in this video. But I think what needs to be said, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm deeply concerned about is I believe that oftentimes when we see these attacks happening, what I'm seeing online is that there is a motivation from authority figures to frame these attacks as a mental health crisis. And again, if we are to understand these attacks in its entirety, we need to get at the root cause. Now, according to the information that I'm reading online, the perpetrator did not appear to have a mental health condition. But even if they did have a mental health condition, still there is an underlying concern, and that is the availability of firearms in the United States of America. Now, there has been people on the opposite end of the spectrum that is pointing to the person saying that this is against Trump, or that this is against Israel, attack on Israel, attack on Trump. And really what I think is happening, ladies and gentlemen, is that when people are pushed up against the wall, right? When they're pushed up against the wall, they're going to reach for anything. And I think what's deeply concerning, in my personal opinion, is that this person felt as if that there was no other option, that they didn't have any other solutions. And that's what we're here to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. Is this an attack? Is this really an attack, a person coming to radicalization? Because again, I have read some reports where there was some Islamic writings, and where there was also some, I guess the firearm had some inscriptions on it that stated Israel, Trump, etc. But is this a case of radicalization, or is it a case of whether someone in authority is pushing this person to the wall, is the question. Now, if you've been following my work, I loathe these kinds of attacks because innocent people lose their life. And as I've said in multiple forums, like, I just could not imagine if this was happening where I currently am residing. Like, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because one, I'm in a country where this is not taking place, which is a relief. But two, I'm watching this take place in the United States, which is still concerning to me. But as I said, is this a situation, ladies and gentlemen, where somebody is being pushed against the wall? And if we look at the staircase model, and I didn't create this model, this model was actually created by, just a moment, I'm gonna go to it. So I believe you pronounce the name Fathali Mohadam. It's a Islamic name, I think, but it's really, sorry if I butchered that name, but Dr. Fathali is what we'll call him. And he created this, I believe it's he or she. I believe Fathali is male. Yes. And so what he did was he created this staircase model, ladies and gentlemen. And I had the opportunity to actually read this model, and I've been studying it for quite some time. And what made me study this model, I'll just kind of give you some history, is about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I was applying to the Into here at Queen's University. And at the time, I'm not sure if that part of Queen's University Into is a is it for like, I think it's for people that are coming out of high school. So, but at the time, of course, I didn't know that it was for people coming out of high school. I just thought that it was an easy way to get into the university because they have a program, uh, a bridging program that bridges you to a program within Queen's University. So I was looking for like an easy way to like bridge because I didn't know that I would be able to submit a REPLO application. But at any rate, when I was in the facility, I seen a poster on the wall and it was listing all these precautions that staff and students should take if in the event that they come across somebody that's possibly uh, coming under radicalization or being influenced by radicalization, and it listed a person feeling discriminated against, a person feeling grievance, etc. And at that moment, I was like, wait a minute, this is authority figures that is actually doing this, like taking these support structures away from persons, vulnerable persons, impressionable persons, in the hope that they would commit an act against national security. And that's deeply disturbing to me, ladies and gentlemen. And again, going back to this case, the Annunciation Catholic School case, no person should experience an event like this. And it raises the question, the more that these events happen and the details of these events, and not only the details of the events, not only the details that were being given about these events, but the way in which they're happening and how those details are being presented to us as the public. What it does is it raises a genuine question as to whether authority figures in the United States of America are using Fatali's staircase model to profile specific persons, or actually whether they're profiling specific persons and using Fatali's staircase model to push these persons up the staircase. Now let's review each step. So the ground floor of Fatali's staircase model is psychological interpretation of material conditions. So this is where we all start out on the ground floor and we all feel as if we can, in some sense, control our destiny and to control our material conditions and to respond in a way, so to have agency and to respond in a way in which we're able to make change that can better our lives, right? But then what happens when we're unable to do that, right? So then, according to Fatali's staircase model, that person moves up a floor. So then they move from the ground floor to the first floor. And the first floor is about perceived options to fight unfair treatment. And here, everybody experiences unfair treatment in their life. Well, not everybody, but a large percentage of the population experiences unfair treatment. So most people are going to be on the first floor and on on the ground floor and on the first floor. Indeed, Fatali tells us this in their paper, and of course in numerous books that I'm reading, especially books on psychological behavior and on studies when it comes to terrorism. They specifically state that many people are either going to be on the ground floor or going to be on the first floor. Because, hey, we are human beings, we are going to experience situations that are unfair, and there is going to be times where we are unable to resolve those circumstances that are unfair to us. But then what happens where the person is unable to resolve those unfair circumstances and there's a persistence of unfair treatment? Well, according to Fatali, the person moves up to the second floor. And this is where people displace their anger. And I think that it may be safe to say that we all might find ourselves on the third floor as well. When you think about a husband and a wife and they're in a relationship together, a husband comes home from a long day at work. Maybe he did not get a raise after working so hard at the company, and he's told that the raise was given to someone else, or the bonus was given to someone else, or the bonus didn't come in. And of course, he wanted to use that bonus to take a vacation with his family or to buy a new home, but couldn't do that, right? Well, there is a possibility that that person would be driven to take his anger out on his wife. And that is not an indication that the person would be driven to radicalization or to commit an act of radicalization. It just means that the person has displaced their anger on a person who didn't really deserve it in the moment. And so I think it's safe to say, and I think we all would agree, that most of us find ourselves on the third floor at one point in time in another or another. I think that we all could say, hey, like, you know, I vented to a person and that wasn't the person who I was angry with. And so this happens all the time. But I think what Fatali is trying to show us is that there are other steps that people take when they're unable to realize their material conditions and unable to fight unfair treatment. And when they displace their anger, then oftentimes they move up a step. And the third floor is moral engagement with organizations. So this is the point where a person is seeking to belong. Remember, in previous videos, I speak about moving against someone. Sometimes we move toward people that we really do like and we really want to get to know. And we move away from people that we feel aren't right for us or aren't congruent to the goals that we're trying to the goals that we have or what we're trying to accomplish in our lives. And then Horney explains that there are times when we move against people, and we move against people in a way that often, I guess in this person's situation, just a moment, I want to get the name correct. In Westman's situation, they moved against, unfortunately, the children, which is never okay. But again, there's no evidence, I think at this point, that Westman was involved in sought out an organization, and hopefully we can confirm whether or not that's true, right? Because there was some Islamic inscriptions. There was an article that stated that, and whether or not that's propaganda or whether that's true, I'm not sure. So like, I'm not going to rely on that at this moment. But what I do know is that oftentimes in these situations, people will try and seek out similarity, right? Groups of similarity. So they could try to find commonality amongst their peers or people in the community. Now, this is not, I don't think, what Holly envisioned. I think what Holly envisioned that the person that is moving into radicalization would seek to find other people are who have that mindset or who have adopted the ideology of radicalization. And so that's where we are at, is at the third floor. The third floor is telling us that the person, there's moral engagement with trying to find an organization that the person can express those beliefs that are incongruent to what society perceives as safe, right? And then once that person finds a group like that, then there is the fourth floor that they move up, which is categorical thinking, legitimacy of these organizations that do commit acts against, national security. Now, in Westman's case, there hasn't been any reports, nothing that I've seen that Westman has was part of an organization, but I think how the media will frame this particular case is as a lone wolf, someone who acted alone and was threatening in their own sense. And I think the categorical thinking to reiterate, is where, if we're looking at it where the person is alone, the person is doing that justification about this. And I do believe that I did see something like that. I do believe that I did read or seen something like that, or watched a video or something about that. And so that is what is deeply disturbing. And then the last floor, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to get to that, is the sidestepping of inhibitions. So the mechanisms that are in place, and so we know that that has happened in this particular situation, right? There was sidestepping of inhibitions, and there was a violent act that was carried out. And I think what we need to ask ourselves is, why is this happening so much? And is the government involved? Because what I have come to understand, ladies and gentlemen, and I've been looking into this for quite some time, is that the government will often remove structures from your life, whether you're experiencing transnational repression. If you're new to my videos, you understand what that is, right? I didn't coin the term, it was coined by Dana Moss. And essentially what that is where countries are reaching across their borders to silence dissent of their citizens, and they do it in a number of ways. There are soft tactics as well as hard tactics. The hard tactics are incommunicado detention, extraordinary renditions, enforced disappearances. Sometimes the person can be unalived. But then we have the soft tactics. So the hard tactics are often those tactics that the global south engages in, countries that are considered authoritarian. But then we have they engage in the hard tactics. But the soft tactics are more the modus operandi of countries in the global north. So the soft tactics would be like proxy threats, digital repression, hacking into a person's devices, putting malware on their devices so that they can't operate, surveilling them. These are all tactics that the global south, the global north engages in to silence the dissent of citizens or foreign nationals in a host country. And so I'm saying that to say that vulnerable person, such as a journalist, a human rights defender, an activist, a student, a scholar, can go through a model like Fatali's model. So, for example, if you have a very powerful authority figure with legitimate power, coercive power, reward power, uh, this very toxic authority figure can remove structures from your life that makes you feel as if the walls are closing in on you, remove grievance procedures. So essentially, they're removing everything out of your life to isolate you. And then if it's so, I think, obvious that they're trying to facilitate abuse, that they'll continue to remove financial support, they'll continue to remove social support, uh, any kind of support that would move you toward right-minded people. They would continue to remove that so that you would commit an act, as we've seen with Westman, which is unfortunate. Now, this raises the question, you may say, well, Kiana, does a person that is radical, does every radicalized person commit an act like this? And the question is no, right? Or I think I phrased that wrong. Or I said that wrong. You may ask Kiana, does the government remove structures away from every person that label radicalization is being placed on? And the answer is no. There are some people that come to radicalization because it's just really their ideology, right? If we look at the Ku Klux Klan back in the day, where they gathered together and they lynched Black Americans and burned down churches and put burning crosses in front of people's homes and churches, right? I think that most of us would agree that these are acts of extremism, acts of radicalization, but did they engage in those acts because someone took support structures away from them? And the answer to that is no, right? They engaged in those acts because they had prejudice and hatred within their heart. And so I think that really needs to be distinguished. Did Westman have hatred and prejudice in their heart? I don't think that there's enough information online to reach that conclusion. There are snippets where the person did not like Donald Trump. There's snippets where the person did not like Israel. There is, and I'm very concerned, and this is something I probably should be researching as well, right? Or looking into, is why when people commit these acts against national security, why are there like these inscriptions on their firearms? Like, is that a message to the public about how they feel or their political ideology or the reason that they're doing it? Is that a message to us, right? Is the question. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I know that this was just concise, but for some reason there's some issues with YouTube and I'm recording on StreamYard. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Remember, your likes and your shares, what it does is it pushes videos like this up the algorithm. It tells the algorithm that videos like this are important, but we must be reminded that just because videos like this are not pushed up in the algorithm does not mean that videos like this are not important. And there you have it. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.